Before we begin, a few management items. This is an in-person meeting which is being live streamed. We do have 2 members participating remotely under the traditional Brown Act rules. All votes will be by roll call. When speaking, please make sure you speak directly into the microphone so that the remote directors and the recording can hear you. After this meeting, you may want to listen to the recording to see how we do. And again, the top button on your microphone is an on/off. If it's on, the green light's on. If it's off, it's off. Okay. When you're, if you want to speak, please put your name placard vertical so we know. And we also need to thank Foster City for allowing us to use this space while our Burlingame space is otherwise occupied. We also need to be respectful of their rules, meaning that this meeting must end by 8:45 sharp. We cannot extend past that time. We will be canceling our closed session tonight as there's no updates beyond those which were in the email that were given to you last Monday or this past Monday. And public comments will be limited to 2 minutes. As some members have been asking for increased public participation, we will be trying a second public comment section later in the meeting, which may offer extended time should the clock permit it, but it's only going to be time permitting. We do have to finish our work first. Okay, first call to order. Ms. Sandkulla, can you take roll call?
Yes. No, I don't have one.
You don't have one?
I don't have one. Okay, is my microphone on? Yes, okay. All right, Andrews, Bro. Here. Chair Chambers.
Present.
Cohen, Dorr. Duncan.
Here.
Hamilton.
Here.
Hardy.
Present.
Hindi. Jordan. Lopez. Manalo. Matichek. Mellinger. Mickelson. Mickelson's here. Montano.
Here.
Piccolotti. Pierce.
Here.
Ragsdale.
Here.
Schneider. Stevenson.
Here.
Stone. Vella. He's we're still waiting for him to get online. Weed. Zichterman.
Here.
Zichterman's here. Thank you. You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Chair, a point of comfort. I wanted to ask the audio technicians if people need to turn their mics off when they're not speaking so we can avoid that echo.
So it might be from you.
Okay,
I think it might be the chair's mic.
I'll make sure it's off when I'm not speaking. Okay, please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good evening and welcome everyone to BAWSCA's July 18th, 2024 board meeting. For our meeting tonight, I have invited SFPUC Assistant General Manager Steve Ritchie to give a presentation on the SFPUC's Alternative Water Supply Plan. The SFPUC will be relying on this plan to develop information to support the next critical water supply investment decisions that will be needed to ensure that San Francisco can meet its legal and contractual obligations to BAWSCA agencies. I look forward to Mr. Ritchie's presentation and encourage board members to ask their important questions of him. Tonight's agenda also includes action to initiate the development of BAWSCA's long-term planning work, BAWSCA Strategy 2050, to ensure that BAWSCA can meet its goal of a reliable supply of high-quality water at a fair price for the customers of BAWSCA agencies. This board has been actively engaged over a year in developing the scope of this important effort. And tonight, this board has the important role of approving the contract and funding to move this work forward for development. Okay. Director Hardy, would you like to give the BPC report?
Absolutely. The Board Policy Committee met on June 12th, and the report was attached to tonight's agenda. It reflects reflects correctly the discussions that we had. After a very deep dive into the details, the BPC voted unanimously in support of the board's approval of contracting and funding to initiate the development of the Strategy 2050. Additionally, the BPC had an extensive discussion regarding the consideration of an increase in board member compensation. There is no recommendation from the BPC on this item. However, their notes and the staff memo accurately reflect all the considerations and the discussion that was had. Lastly, I will say, because of many summer recesses and no real pressing issues, the August BPC meeting has been canceled, and our next meeting will be October 9th. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hardy. Oops. Thank you, Director Hardy. Are there any questions from the board on the BPC report? Any questions from the public or any comments from the public on the BPC report? Okay. Item 4 is consent calendar. If anybody has any comments on the consent calendar or wish any items pulled, I will say that there is a correction on the attendance sheet for Cal Water. It lists Tom Snagel, and Darren's name should be there in addition. So we will correct it when it gets published. Any other corrections or comments about consent calendar? Hearing no comments, are there any public comments on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I'm open for a motion and a second. Director Hamilton?
Move to approve the items on consent with the changes outlined by the chair.
Thank you.
Second.
Second is Director Pierce. Okay. Roll call.
Andrews? Bro?
Yes, for Brisbane and GBMID.
Thank you. Chair Chambers?
Aye.
Cohen? Dorr?
Yes.
Duncan?
Yes.
Hamilton?
Aye.
Hardy?
Yes.
Hindi?
Yes.
Jordan? Lopez? Manalo? Matichek? Mellinger? Mickelson? Montano?
Yes.
Piccolotti? Pierce?
Yes.
Ragsdale?
Yes.
Schneider? Stevenson? Stone? Vella? I did not hear you, Director Vella. There we go. I can hear you now.
Yes.
Excellent. Vella, aye. Weed? Zichterman? Director Zichterman?
Yes.
Zichterman, aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, our next item is the SFPUC report. So, Mr. Ritchie, we look forward to hearing your report. Mr. Ritchie, thank you. Use the microphone.
The green button. The green button, it has been pressed. Well, 2 buttons have been pressed. We're good. I hope. Okay, I'll swallow it. That'll do it. Everyone is different. Good evening. I'm happy here to be to present information on our water supply at one point and on the alternative water supply plan that we've been developing. I'm joined, of course, by Allison Castema, who is involved in all of these things. Excuse me. And she and I are both available to answer questions at any time on all of these. I will just sit real close and hold it right here. First on the water supply update, this is a recent report on our water levels. Hetchy spilled actually starting on about June 25th. Spill is over now, and the water level is starting to drop since runoff is over, and we're just supplying demand of about 234 million gallons per day from Hetchy down to the Bay Area. So overall, the water supply picture is very good going forward. Again, because it was really an average year, but an average year for us means we had enough water to fill Hetchy 3 times, so there is plenty of water this year. Now I'm going to talk about the alternative water supply planning program, and this is our annual progress report. This is a presentation that we gave to our commission at the end of May that is on the plan. First of all, on reporting, excuse me, we've been doing quarterly reports since June on this and presenting them routinely to our commission and sharing them all with all the interested parties. In February this year, we actually finalized the alternative water supply plan. Our commission did not adopt the plan since we see this as a continually being updated document that will assist us in making decisions on it, because this is not a decision document, but rather decisions will come on the individual projects as we move along through our capital improvement program. So this is the annual progress report. First, something we always want to emphasize, we will be working at extending our existing supplies. You know, we don't have to build anything new until we've really started to exhaust all of these things, such as our conservation programs. We have big programs in place for San Francisco, as well as all of the customers, and we will all be, I'm sure, moving forward on conservation. We have planned to expand our groundwater program in San Francisco. On-site water reuse is a big part of our program. We are expanding recycled water with the West Side Recycled Water Project in particular, as others, again, customers of ours are expanding their programs. We have an innovations program looking at all kinds of new ideas out there. So these are the lowest hanging fruit for us by any means. We always want to be reaching for those. But there is a future out there that does have some serious hurdles for us. One of the things that we've been saying for quite some time, just make sure this is very clear, we are in the planning process for all of these things. And the planning process can take time, it takes a reasonable amount of money, but you don't really spend serious money until you get to construction. So we plan for all of the obligations we have, such as the 184 MGD supply assurance for you and additional supply for San Francisco. But we won't build for that until we see that really on the horizon in terms of demand that is actually starting to occur. So here I've got a couple of tables. One that talks about the projected water availability in 2045, and one of the things that we have available in 2045 with the Bay Delta Plan amendment as adopted by the state board back in 2018, and that is one of the things we're having to deal with, is being ready for the eventuality that that might become the reality that we have to deal with. So the water availability would be about 152 million gallons per day. So when we look at that in terms of, given the 152 million gallon per day availability, what kind of shortfalls could we face? And the largest possible is about 122 million gallons per day, which is a big number, and there's a lot of discussion around that. Always has been, and there always will be. But the key thing is that is a possible future for us that we need to be thinking about. If the water quality control plan is not put in place, that demand drops to a lower number on the order of 90 MGD. But either way, we have to be prepared for those kinds of shortfalls out there in the future. Again, we don't have to build for them now, but we have to be thinking about them. So we had various recommendations in the alternative water supply plan, making sure we had funding available for different things. So we've noted here that we wanted to make sure that we had funding available for looking at treatment alternatives for our groundwater storage and recovery project that we're working on with other wholesale customers. There's about $30 million in our capital program to evaluate some additional treatment alternatives to make that an easier to operate project. We are working on a redesign of the Alameda Creek Recapture project because I think that project had some flaws in how it was being developed, and so we're set aside about $5 million to further plan that and make sure that we get on the right track on the design there. We are also looking at infrastructure and operational needs for the San Francisco groundwater supply project, about $13.5 million, and planning and technical analyses for Pure Water San Francisco, which would be actually in San Francisco a purified water project that we are moving forward on, starting to look at that as part of our future, because I think we're all looking at that as part of the future. Continuing on, we are also always reporting on progress on voluntary agreement and potential transfers and projects that we might do with the irrigation districts. Again, we are starting some real serious conversations with them that we hope will bear some fruit. We'll be providing an update in 2020, 26, 27 on the plan. We're looking at additional demand scenarios. You know, there's a lot of talk about, well, what will the demands be in the future? I think we're all facing some big uncertainty right now in the face of reduced demands over time, but at the same time, everybody's facing a big increase in housing due to the new housing elements that everybody has to deal with. Where does that all land? That's a big uncertainty, so we're going to keep evaluating that as time goes on. Because one thing we always know is that the demand picture will continue to change over time, and we need to be prepared for that change. And also in partnership with you, we're exploring the feasibility of developing some kind of a grant program to support local projects that reduce demands on the regional water system. How can we marshal funds together that can be used for a grant program to actually develop local projects that otherwise wouldn't be built but could use some financial assistance? Yeah. That one right there. You're right. Thank you. Yeah, wait a second. There was some more information in there. And that's right. I don't know how I ended up skipping that. One of the recommendations is to continue work on the Los Vaqueros expansion project. We've talked about that a bit with the wholesale customers here. That is a challenging project. It requires a lot of agreement among many parties. And so all of us are working hard on those agreements to make sure that if the project is built, it will actually deliver on supplies that we might all need. The Daly City Recycled Water Expansion Project is a project that is continuing, has been for a while. We need to negotiate some agreements on that and then get to final design and hopefully construction. We've provided funding for the South Bay Purified Water Project, working with San Jose and Santa Clara on a purified water project, as well as Pure Water Peninsula with agencies on the peninsula, and the ACWD and Union Sanitary District Purified Water Project. So purified water is for all of us, and that's why one new person we got approved in the budget is a purified water program manager, somebody who is focused on the future of what the regulations might be and how you can implement purified water projects. Again, that is the use of wastewater ultimately for drinking water, and I think that's going to be a key component for all of us. And I think Director Pierce will remember that I brought that up, must be 12, 14 years ago, that it's part of the future and we need to be planning for it. And I already covered this slide, or no, I didn't. Yes, I did. Sorry about that. And I covered that one as well. So a little bit about the projects throughout the service area. Again, these are projects that are highlighted that were part of that mix: the Daly City Recycled Water Expansion, purified water on the peninsula and the South Bay. And each one of these circles represents those projects. Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion, as well as supply alternatives for it and conveyance alternatives. How do you move the water? Not just build a new reservoir, but how can you move water from it? Those three are collectively in the large bubble there on the right-hand side for Los Vaqueros expansion. Again, Alameda County Water District and Union Sanitary District, purified water, and also Calaveras Reservoir expansion, which is a project that I think we had some promise for, but that's going to prove to be much more challenging, I think, than we imagined. So we're slowing down work on that project. So here's the timeline of those projects moving forward. In the case of the Los Vaqueros expansion trio and Daly City recycled water, the projected online date would be 2030. So we're moving towards actual construction on those projects. Whether that happens or not is still a little up in the air, especially on Los Vaqueros expansion, because that one we're still trying to get the agreements in place. And if the local area partners, of which we are one on behalf of all of you, if that project does not appear to meet our needs, then we're not going to participate in it. That decision point is probably coming in the first half of 2025, just to let you know. But those, if those move forward, would be projected being online in roughly 2030. For South Bay Purified Water, Pure Water Peninsula, and the ACWD USD Purified Water, we're looking in the late 2030s for those projects to come online. And again, we have deferred further planning on the Calaveras Reservoir expansion. I think it's not so much how difficult it is to expand the potential reservoir, but how difficult it is to get new water there. That is proving to be a very challenging issue that we think is not worth our investment in time right now. We will see how that goes over time. On the financial side, the total dollars spent between July 2020 and May 2024 is about $12.4 million. Programmatic funds on some of the purified water projects and program level activities, Daly City Recycled Water, Pure Water Peninsula, ACWD USD, Los Vaqueros expansion, and Calaveras have all had money spent on those. They're summarized here in this table, but it's been a total of about $12 million on planning so far. Again, these numbers are on the low end because it is just planning numbers. When you're talking about implementation and actual construction, the numbers will get much larger. We haven't included any of those projections in here because they really are, they would be better than wild guesses, but not a whole lot better until we get further into engineering. And that's what's going to be the next step as we move forward. What's the engineering going to show us? So earlier this year, our commission approved the 10-year capital improvement plan, including funding for the regional project planning from the alternative water supplies. Our totals in the CIP for regional water are $1.63 billion, and for Hetchy water, $1.53 billion. Within that, the AWS program represents about $260 million worth of planning and some construction in the 10-year plan. For the next 2 fiscal years, that's about $11 million for the purified water and other studies, some more on the Daly City recycled water expansion, and the South Bay purified water. In the case of Daly City recycled water, we have already appropriated funds to carry forward on the construction on that, and similarly with Los Vaqueros expansion. The money to make that decision is actually already available from our budget process. We don't have new money for those going forward. One of the things about the financial plan that people always ask us is, well, how hard will this be to actually pay for in the future? And one of the things that we want to make sure is very clear that we have a very robust CIP development process that takes sound financial planning to make it work. And that includes making sure that we are planning properly for the infrastructure that we all need in the future. It's not just alternative water supplies, but it's maintaining and reinforcing those things we've already built. We always are working really hard at low-cost debt funding, such as the SRF, WIFIA, and tax-exempt bonds. We have very conservative financial policies. We have a reserve policy right now, debt coverage ratio policies, and ratepayer affordability policy that the Commission recently adopted. We have numerous proactive audits on the things that we do over time to make sure that we're spending our money wisely and in compliance with all of the requirements. And we set rates that are compliant with Prop 218 and the water supply agreement that we have with all of you. So it really is a bundle of things that really we have to take into account to move forward and make sure that we are going to be doing the right thing in terms of our investment and paying for it in the future. So we plan our finances to support our infrastructure needs without overly burdening our constituents, and that is part of the program that we are going to carry forward. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the board? Okay, Director Dorr.
I have one question. So what the question I have, you mentioned about the water wells, but it just it just mentions San Francisco. What about the other cities that are, for example, in Milpitas, we're going to be opening up, working on opening up a new well. So would we be getting funding from Hetchy or from San Francisco Public Utilities, or no?
Yeah, if an individual agency is doing a project now, that is with their own resources and how they develop that. One of the things I mentioned was potentially developing a funding program where we collectively, or maybe with other funding sources, could offer grants to agencies to do things as well. But that is not in place now, and will take a lot of work to put something like that in place. So right now, it's on you. It's on you. Just like the San Francisco groundwater project is on San Francisco.
Right. It is on us. Okay, thank you. But but right now there's no grants available for that. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Director Dorr.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing a little bit more about financials. I'm curious if, given the plans with AWS and other activities at SFPUC, if you have projected rate increases that you'll see for the wholesale or the retail customers in the next 10 years, given the allocations and the budgets that you described here.
Yes, for the next 10 years, we have projections of rates for the next 10 years that we developed as part of our capital improvement program process. People ask me, well, what can you provide people? I said, we've got a huge record of what we did in our capital improvement planning. And so we do have 10-year rate increases projected out. We actually started to look at what on the wastewater side for San Francisco may be coming up. But again, some of those things are still speculative. We have not projected out rate increases for things in the next 10 years on the water side because we think that is too speculative as well at this point in time.
Do you have for the next 5 years? I'm just curious if there are numbers that you can share with us.
The next 5, 10 years, yes. That we have rate projections. That's something that we routinely do.
I would love if that kind of information could be included in some of the presentations that you offer us, so we can be thinking about that in concert with everything else. Another question, on meeting obligations, I know that there are the obligations that we have, and there's also what is actually used and what the demand is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if there are any thoughts about updating what those obligations are, given my sense is that the demand is somewhat or fairly less than what the obligations are. And so there's a discrepancy of how much is actually used, how much do we say we have to give, and then we're trying to fill that gap with some of the alternative water supply. And I'm curious if there's any opportunity here to adjust what that obligation is and the gap between what is used and what SFPUC has to be guaranteed to offer.
Well, we are not looking at adjusting the obligations. For example, the one particularly I mentioned is the supply assurance of 184 million gallons per day. That is something that we feel an obligation in perpetuity based on the settlement agreement in 1984 that we have to plan for that so that if that ever came about, we are prepared for it. What I did mention in the presentation is, we have various demand projections. We will be we will be looking at different alternatives on those over time. And we will probably be doing 1 to 2 different demand projections in different increments, maybe every couple of years, maybe every 5 years, but frequently enough that they can help us, but not so frequently that we're just running in a circle trying to catch up with what demand is. And as I mentioned, The biggest wild card in that right now, well, the two big wild cards are obligations that we might have under the Water Quality Control Plan, and what basically demand might be with implementation of the new housing elements for all of the customers, including San Francisco. That is a very large uncertainty right now that I think we all need to try to figure out how we're going to deal with that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Director Burrow, please.
Thank you, sir. So good evening, Mr. Ritchie. Thank you, as always, for giving up so much of your time and your staff's resources to come and present to us. The first comment I'd like to make is I'd like to pivot off what Director Doerr's comments were making, and I would ask that as soon as it's reasonably possible that you provide us an estimate of what you think those 10-year impacts are going to be from CIPs. And of course, I understand that there's inherent inaccuracy because you're planning things out 10 years in advance, but the
Right.
sooner that we can get a sense of that, the sooner local agencies can impact or roll that into our own rate-setting processes. So I'd appreciate that very much.
Yeah, let me
good.
comment on that, is that we have, 10-year projections, but the real numbers are in the next 2 years. The latter 8 years are more projections. And Allison, I think you wanted to add something. I think that's.
Okay. Director Wright?
Oh, she might even have the numbers here.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I know we do, for the wholesale rate increase, certainly project out rates to Board Member Doerr's question. So we certainly have, I believe, a projection on those rates that we have, I think, provided to you. That's what I'm trying to see on a prior presentation.
I can confirm that that information was provided to the board because you got the rate notice that the PUC put out and included the 10-year projection, but we can provide it again.
Yes. And I think the CIP, the 10-year CIP, I think was also some projections of that.
Correct.
Thank you. That certainly makes it help for us because obviously we're doing the same thing on our end, and we wouldn't want to have we wouldn't want to couple our large rate spikes with your large rate spikes, right? We probably want to try to avoid that. The other question I have is more related to how the three enterprises at SFPUC work together, in particular water and wastewater. I saw a criticism not that long ago in the paper where someone was suggesting that because the wastewater enterprise has a large CIP system coming up, similar to what the water side did with WESIP, that was going to take resources away from the water enterprise and their ability to complete the alternative water supply project. So I'd just be interested in your comment as to whether that's a valid concern or not.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid question because one of the things that San Francisco has, for better or for worse, is a combined bill for water and sewer services. So it's just one bill, and so everybody sees that bill, and they blame whoever they want to for however big it is, and it depends on who's talking at the time because it's your fault. But regardless, those numbers are big on that side because what would just happen last Wednesday, the Regional Water Board adopted the new NPDES permit modification to require nutrient reductions of about 40% in the next 10 years. On our wastewater side, I think we've set aside $1.5 billion for that. Don't know if we'll need to spend that much, but that's what's there. So that's going to contribute to, and what we're seeing right now is a larger increase on the wastewater side. That clearly, is going to affect how we have to view what we do with our ratepayers, and San Francisco's share of the, excuse me, of the split of funding for the regional water projects, which is 1/3 and 2/3. So we have that challenge before us. I don't know what it's going to look like in 15 years, say, but I think there is something that we have to legitimately be carefully watching that. We think that with all the planning we do and with the different policies we have in place, that we are going to be able to manage that, but that's something that I can't guarantee right now because, as I think people also noted, the city of San Francisco was sued by the EPA on the wastewater side, and so there may be a settlement of additional work that has to happen there, but there's nothing specific on that. So like with everybody else, the pressures keep on coming, and that is incumbent on us to deal with those pressures and find a way to do the right thing that we have to. Maybe in the future, if we have to start moving or doing different 10-year CIPs, maybe we back off on some of the replacement projects that we've got in mind and spend money on alternative water supplies. Or maybe we back off a little bit on alternative water supplies. One of the things that we've all been working on for a long time now is the voluntary agreements, the Healthy Rivers and Landscape Program, which would reduce the demand, excuse me, at least for the next 8 to 15 years on what might happen in terms of required flows in the Bay Delta system. That dramatically reduces that shortfall number. Doesn't eliminate it, but it makes a big change there. So as always, there's lots of balls in the air, and there are risks out there that we all have to figure out a way to manage.
But if I understand correctly, it sounds like the potential slowdown of waterside CIPs, including the AWS, is more based on a concern about ratepayer shock or impact in the city than it is on the resources available within the water enterprise to complete those projects?
Well, it's a concern. You know, is it something that I lose sleep about overnight? No, it's not. You know, I'm quite confident that we can come up with an answer. But it is a legitimate thing, and we can't ignore it. That's the issue. That's why we adopted a ratepayer an affordability policy. I can also foresee a future where we finally, how shall I say this without being too political, we come to our senses as a state and realize we have lots of low-income people out there who can't afford, no matter what it is we do, they can't afford it. But we're bound by Prop 218 to make sure everybody's paying the same cost of service, whether they're a gazillionaire or, you know, a 10,000-aire. And that is just wrong. We need to find a way to fix that.
Okay. Director Ragsdale?
Thank you. And thank you for that last comment, not too political and appreciated. I had a question, I think, probably from the same editorial that we received. I just wanted to know if you could speak a little bit to the drought predictions and how realistic they are, and if they can change with, if they're flexible to change over time, so we're not making plans for a drought that is out of the realm of possibility.
We don't make drought predictions. We deal with what we think we are going to be facing, which is a lot of uncertainty. And one of the things we had was a serious drought from 86 through 92. We think that we will be facing something worse than that at some point. How much worse, how long, that's where there is uncertainty. And so we need to think about how we plan for that. The current design drought we use, that's the phrase that goes with it, is an 8.5-year drought. But that design drought, for modeling purposes, carries our system storage all the way to 0 at the end. And I can tell you right now, I think I probably will retire in the next 8.5 years. So I won't face that point. But the person who's in my job will never get this, let the system get to 0. So what we, sometimes get wrapped around is like, oh, that's too long. Okay, well, yeah, we can shorten the design drought, but we won't have 0 as the end point. We will have an end point that is maybe 200,000 acre-feet, so that we have enough water that we can rely on to get through that next year, because that next year is the one you never know what is going to happen. So we can talk about that, but our planning will continue to be conservative. And I always like to say, the state used to require people to show they could get through a 3-year drought. The state just changed that to show you can get through a 5-year drought. The state is moving our direction. And one of these days, maybe it's longer than that. And again, in nobody's lifetime here, we could be facing biblical droughts in the future as well. So I think these are really serious issues that a manager like myself has to really, really be very thoughtful about how to approaching those long-term risks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Andrews, followed by Director Hamilton. So Director Andrews.
Thank you. Wanted to ask about the plans for the low-cost debt funding, and I'm hearing SRF funds are depleted or close to depleted, and wanted to see how much energy is being spent on the other methods of getting financing.
We actually have a part of our organization dedicated to working very hard on the whole SRF program for us and our wastewater side for in San Francisco. And the same, and then is on SRF, on WIFIA, there's a new program through the Corps of Engineers called SFPUC that is for dam safety. Their whole job is actually to help lobby and encourage the development and funding of those programs, and then working very closely with the agencies that implement those. We're just sending a letter that I signed off on relative to the drinking water SRF yeah, I probably would have used less elegant language. They were very encouraging of the state to do certain things. I might have been a little pushier on it, but I think they're basically, we work very hard to cultivate the agencies to make sure that we are helping them help us. And that's a key part of the program. And it's, you got to make an investment in that, but it pays off. Where we've gotten hundreds of millions of dollars, probably verging on the $1 billion in low interest loans from the state and federal government.
Okay, and then I also wanted to know about the prioritization of the AWS projects. How is that prioritized? Is there a working group? How do you decide which ones you move forward with?
Well, what we have done over time is identify the candidate projects that seem the most likely ones that we can carry forward with. That's that short list there. We will continue to be looking at that and potentially evaluating new projects. The whole development of the plan was done not in a vacuum, but sharing with people all of our thoughts and plans. We had also a comment period on it where people could contribute that. But again, all the projects are ones that, we can possibly do. Do I think all 4 of the purified water projects that we're working on, the 3 in the AWS plan and the 1 in San Francisco, do I think we'll do all 4 of those? I suspect not. But we don't know which ones that will be the most likely candidates going forward.
And I know that the NPDES permit was, the watershed permit was approved last week. And I know there was a resolution to revisit the timeline because of that 10-year is a very short window to upgrade facilities on the wastewater side. Wanted to see if there's going to be some similar advocacy on the water side to look at what we can do to support our colleagues on the wastewater side, because it's going to impact different projects.
Oh yeah, no, we collectively as an agency have been working on that issue, that nutrient issue, for quite some time, and we'll continue to be working on it and, hopefully collaborating with the state on how we approach it, and being realistic about what can be accomplished and what can't be accomplished. And so that's just part of the ongoing relationship one has with regulatory agencies. I used to head the Regional Water Quality Control Board, so I'm really familiar with the fact that you set a deadline, but then if it starts coming close and you're not getting there for some reason that is legitimate, you change the deadline. Or if not, you get tough and slap people around and say, we got to get it done. But you have to do what you have to do.
And I hope this isn't too political, but also some advocacy of addressing the nutrients, but also the PFAS at the source to help reduce some of the impact that's going to happen in terms of upgrading our facilities versus hitting the ratepayer, hit the corporations that are creating these forever chemicals in our water. So I hope that's some advocacy from our side as well.
Yeah, and all of these, I should say also at the same time, we are advocating for, again, more low interest or maybe even grants to help pay for some of these things so that, we don't have to go to our ratepayers for it.
If you can make sure you speak more directly into the mic, because
Sorry
we're
about that.
not hearing very well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, done? Director Hamilton, followed by Director Reed.
Thank you. So we've heard through the Tuolumne River Trust that the costs of the alternative water supply plan would create a death spiral where increasing rates would result in lower use, which results in declining revenue, which results in increasing rates and so forth. Does the SFPUC have a different expectation for how that would play out? And if yes, what is it?
I used to have conversations with one of our former CFOs about his worry at night is a death spiral. Even before we thought of the alternative water supply plan, he would worry about that. I said, Eric, don't worry about it, because it's not going to get you anywhere. You're going to lose your hair, but that's all. But basically, do we think that we are in a rate death spiral? No, we don't think we are. Again, I think the prudent planning measures that we have in place on the financial side will help us avert that. I think it's easy for people to say that, and we've talked with folks who've been talking about that, and they agree with a lot of the planning things we're doing in private, and then continue to advocate that way. But I don't believe that we are in a death spiral.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Director Reed, followed by Director Zieglerman. Okay, Director Zieglerman, followed by Director Mickelson.
I can see you talking. Maybe can we increase Director Zieglerman's sound?
Thank you. My question's been answered already. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Director Mickelson.
Hi, thank you. So my question has already been asked by a couple directors, but I just wanted to add a little bit to it. 20 years ago, it was really nice knowing what the WISIP was going to do to rates. And right now, we kind of have this unknown of what the implementation would be of the alternative water source. So I, too, would like to know that. And it would be nice to know what the cost of the full implementation would be, so that we could bring that back to our customers. And what impact would a negotiated settlement have on that? So I think what we're really talking about here is all this negotiated settlement is all the more urgent, because I don't think any one of us here are really going to like the numbers that we hear, what the full implementation of the alternative water supply will be. I think that's going to be a very, very scary number, and I think we really need to concentrate on a negotiated settlement so we just don't have rate increases that are going to be unfathomable to like you were saying, to the non-gazillionaire customer base. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Seeing no other questions. Okay. One more question.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. I wanted to say how much I appreciated the fact that you're investing in the planning, because that's the most efficient use of the money, and then you have the choice on which of your projects you're going to do, because those are the big costs. I had a question about how you're going to modify, and I'm assuming you're going to modify the alternative water supply plan as things develop and things change. And so, since we always get new demand estimates, how are you going to be modifying the plan, and is there a structure for that? And will it take into consideration some of the data that BAWSCA may be uncovering in the work that we're going to be launching this coming year?
Yeah, I think it might have been in the slide that I gave short change to when I skipped over it accidentally, that we expect to modify the plan in about 2 years. We think by then we will have enough new information to make it worthwhile to modify the plan into a new comprehensive document that will continue to assist us in decision-making in the future. Every 2 years, maybe every 3 to 5 years. It really depends on the rate of change. And not to keep coming back to the housing element, but finding out what's actually happening in housing throughout the region, I think, would be a big piece of that. And the information that is collected, as you said, by BAWSCA, of demands from the whole agencies and your projections based on what you're seeing and feeling as what the future of your service areas are. So that'll be very important information that is going to contribute to this. Also, well, in 2025, which usually spills into 2026, we will be looking at new urban water management plans that have to take some of these things into account. And what we call planning numbers, and that will be an interesting effort by all of us. So, yeah, about every 2 to 3 years, I suspect we will be updating the plan. We will be constantly reporting now on an annual basis as opposed to a quarterly basis on progress on the projects we have underway and other activities relative to this, such as potentially developing new demand projections.
So then I assume that it'll be the continuing relationship with BAWSCA and the exchange of information that will help to update things.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, any other question from? Any other questions from board members? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Ritchie. We have two people, two speaker cards on this. Public comment for 2 minutes. Mr. Rosencrantz. And that'll be for.
Steve, are you suggesting he was trolling you?
I have an incredible photograph of a 5-year-old nephew at Devon on early May when he had a snowstorm. Made this wonderful snowman. But he also got, with his older uncles and nephews, was able to get 1 rainbow and 2 brown, and you learned all about first fish poop.
Good lessons.
Thank you very much, Spreck Rosecrans, Restore Hetchetchee. For the last 30 years, by far, the greatest growth in urban water supply has come through groundwater banking. That's recharging groundwater in aquifers, mostly in agricultural communities. Farmers are paid to use that groundwater, making surface water available to cities. That's something San Francisco should be pursuing. That's something BAWSCA should be pursuing. I know San Francisco is talking to the irrigation districts, and that's a good thing. I know Ms. Sandkulla has talked to folks as well about this opportunity. After 10 years ago, the state of California passed the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, and it has engaged in watershed by watershed studies of the potential, the physical potential, without policy recommendations for how it would be used, who would get the benefits, all that sort of stuff. Sadly, San Francisco declined to participate in the study of the Tuolumne watershed. Wouldn't you all like to know how much water is available, what could be done? I suggest you asked Mr. Ritchie and Mr. Herrera and the commission why they're not involved. I think you guys should be involved in that. You guys should find out how much water could be had, especially since it's usually so much cheaper than all these other things. Certainly no $8,000 an acre foot, and I'd say a lot cheaper than recycling or desalination as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dreckmeyer.
Good evening. Peter Dreckmeyer with the Tuolumne River Trust. Just want to start by saying I'm really pleased by how engaged the board is today and asking a lot of really great questions. I try to be helpful when I come here. I know sometimes people don't like to hear what I have to say, but I often leave frustrated, and today I'm going to leave a little bit more pleased, so thank you. BAWSCA's goals are to ensure a reliable water supply, high quality water at a fair price. I think if you ask any of your constituents if it's a fair price, you're going to get a lot of no's, especially since on July 1st, the SFPUC started raised the wholesale rates by 8.8%. So an acre foot from the SFPUC is almost $2,500. That's really, really expensive water, most expensive in the state. When the Water System Improvement Program was adopted in 2008, the price tag was $4.8 billion. We never talk about the debt, and we're still paying the debt. The SFPUC is really in a financial crisis. I think they are in a death spiral right now. And it's probably started by the WSIP. What happened, they were projecting that by 2018, demand would be 285 million gallons per day. If you sell that much water, you're making a lot of money. But the actual was 196. It was off by 31%. The demand projections are always off in the range of 20 to 25%. And so much less water was being sold. We had this huge debt to pay off, and the price of water had to triple. By now, it's probably about quadrupled. The SFPUC, by 2047, the annual debt service is going to be greater than their whole budget last year. Now, that includes wastewater and power, but water is a huge chunk of that. You saw in one of the slides that between the regional water projects and the Hetch Hetchy water projects for 10 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment, including from the remote locations? And seeing none. Okay, thank you. Our next item is Water Management Representative Report. Phil Witt, from the General Manager from Prisma Hills Water District, has prepared a presentation. Will you speak to the board?
Yes. Good evening. Recognize some of you from the years and awkward conferences and what have you. This is an old picture from the Calaveras Dam, which is kind of cool. I took that picture years ago. My name is Phil Witt with Prisma Hills Water District. I've worked at Prisma for 25 years, managed for roughly almost 5 years now. Prisma is a very small water agency in Los Altos Hills. Oh, there we go. We have roughly about 6,200 in population, 4,600 acres. Our last year's water purchase was 1.31 MGD. Our residents our connections are mostly residential. We have a few schools, and we also have a lot, interestingly enough, a lot of non-retirement communities, which is kind of interesting. They've ended up there. I don't know why, but some of our key issues. Prisma is a single source agency fed by San Francisco. Prisma doesn't have any wells currently. However, we are studying the probability of drilling in search for water within our district. An issue for us to consider is we are outside of Valley Water's groundwater recharge zone, so we don't have, the water table that might be elsewhere in Santa Clara County. And we are looking into all other water options for redundancy for our customers. Prisma has a well-prioritized capital improvement program. We maintain a strong pipeline replacement effort with a new yard maintenance building in the near future, as well as recently performing seismic upgrades and foundations to our tanks and pump station upgrades for seismic reliability. Our capital expenditures are usually on the range of $2 to $4 million. We are a small staff, so much larger than that, we kind of get overwhelmed with the interaction with the contractor and the needs that the contractor has for communication with customers. Prisma, as of a few years ago, could have been mostly considered built out with only a few 5 to 20 acre properties left in town still to be developed in the near future. However, with the new housing development housing element that we're all dealing with, our population will most likely change. We're doing the best to understand how our customers will use ADUs as they get developed. And again, since we are large lots and mostly residential, the room for ADUs is very available. So being a member of the WMR, some of our key benefits, I've been attending BAWSCA meetings since Nicole was even CEO. Anyway, but back then I was an operations guy, and a lot that was discussed was far over my head. But fast forward to where we are now, being a part of the most recent Tier 2 discussions, which impact all of us and is painful for all of us. There is not one water representative manager in the negotiations that's happy with any of the outcomes, because drought just doesn't work out for anybody. But it has been very complex and exhausting, but through it we have developed relationships between all of the water managers, which has been a very positive outcome, though it's been a struggle. We all learned what each agency is fighting for in areas that can be worked with and negotiated. And additionally, the network of WMRs is an invaluable resource for each one of the WMRs as a whole. Just in case WMR is water management representative, I just thought I'm sure you already know that, but just for those that might be on TV. The WMR has discussed many challenges for future water supply shortfalls and uncertainty, as Steve just talked a lot about. SFPUC has 184 million gallons to supply per the WSA. And as Steve just said, SFPUC is investing in water supply options. And through that, each agency is also researching its own possibilities and cost-sharing ideas that can be helped financially. Recently, the SFPUC did a fixed rate increase that started a lot of conversations within the WMR meetings. The SFPUC made presentations explaining the reason for the increase, and through the process, we're very receptive to the comments from the WMRs. which was very appreciated. We also talk about some of the water efficiencies. BAWSCA keeps the WMRs apprised of conservation standards and legislation, indoor and outdoor water use at the state level, and the ever-growing assembly bills relating to water conservation efficiency. Being a member of the WMR is nothing but a collaborative effort most of the time. Tier 2 and Tier 1 water cutbacks have been most of the recent hot topics that all the WMRs at BAWSCA alike have been dredging through. While very exhaustive, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There are just a few more items to be covered before it's completed. The 4 agencies that have minimum purchased have brought forward a proposed amendment to the WSA that is currently being discussed. And again, the tier 2 is mentioned. Only a few items to be covered, and then Tier 2 will be completed, and then will be brought to you for approval. This has been a multi-year effort, very tiresome for Nicole, Danielle, and then one of the lead consultants. The minimum purchase, the suggested minimum purchase has many different angles to be considered by the WMRs as being discussed internally and appeared to be coming closer to an agreement and understanding. Patience from the agencies that are proposing the amendment and BAWSCA is much appreciated, because though all the issues are discussed in the WMR meetings, every manager has a job to do, and that is to, for lack of a better word, defend its agency. Because of allegiance, however, we do have to all work together. And that's all I have on this report. Is there any comments?
Okay.
Maybe in a...
Any questions from the board for Mr. Witt? Okay, Director Ragsdale?
Not a question, just a comment. I really appreciate your report, and thank you for being here. We all have a relationship with Danielle and also with our own water management rep, but to hear from your perspective is super helpful, and I just really appreciate the work you all do and the cooperative spirit, and it makes a big difference to us.
Yeah, I agree. It's very evident in the WMR meetings too, so yeah, I appreciate the comment.
Okay, Director Hardy?
Thank you. I too appreciate your report and recognize that you represent a very small group, but important. And so I was listening very carefully. The Tier 2 agreement, I can appreciate that if you can get 26 people in a room and everybody agree, it's not fun, especially when we're talking about drought and not having water. So I appreciated your comments. You mentioned one alternative that was not a good alternative for you necessarily because you're not within the groundwater recharge for Valley Water, which I understand. Do you have any other options, or is there any other alternatives you're able to maybe partner with other small groups and look at purified water possibilities? I was just curious. Thank you.
Yeah, that's, I kind of didn't get too much into the details, but yes, as San Francisco looks into their options, there is financial options for agencies to help fund these efforts. So yeah, there's definitely options there. However, there's also the conveyance part, which we kind of sit off. We're a little bit of an island. So that's a concern and an issue for Purisima specifically. So then you get into a potential wheeling or so. But yes, we are looking at other options as well. Outside of the well option. And we coincidentally have an old retired quarry in our water district that I believe it was the quarried material was to help develop 280. And that's full of water now. If you look on Google, it's been on Google renamed to the Los Altos Reservoir, but it is a Los Altos Hills Reservoir, I bet, but it is a retired quarry. So we've looked at that. It proposes its own issues also, but yeah.
Okay, Director Andrews.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
It's better? Okay. Thank you for your presentation. I was curious about your CIP. Have you found it difficult to implement given the size of your district and getting contractors on board? Because I can see the projects being smaller.
Yes, yeah, so you're correct, that's a good question. So the range in which we spend, you don't attract some of the larger contractors. So we do have kind of a smaller network of contractors that like to bid kind of our range. We're a special district, so there are a couple other special districts within BAWSCA's reach, and those contractors can kind of jump around between us, which really kind of works out good because relationships get developed and understanding of our specs. But we haven't had any issues with any of the contractors. We've had large contractors, really big ones, and actually those, if I was honest, they were tougher to deal with. But still, you know, we have a very strong specification, and so we were able to keep them under control and being so small.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge that I asked Director Jordan if this is your guy. He said, that's my guy.
Yep,
So
that's my guy too. Director Jordan's my guy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Oh, yeah.
So just for clarification, thank you for the, for the presentation. So Purísima Hills, it's over there in Los Altos Hills?
Los Altos Hills, yeah. We serve roughly 2/3, 3/4 of Los Altos Hills. And then our neighbor to the south and the east is Calwater Los Altos, and they serve Magdalena. And then we are between El Monte and Page Mill in the hills, if you're familiar with the area.
Okay. I serve on the Cities Association for Santa Clara County, and we have, you know, all the mayors of all the cities, and that's our time to network and talk about some of the issues. And there were some comments from some of the folks from the mayors from, I think, Los Altos, or East Los Altos anyhow, because there is a lot of brush, there's a lot of trees, and and so they're concerned about the wildfires because of climate change. So I was just wondering, what are you, I don't know if your agency is the one that takes a proactive approach of building percolation ponds or something, or and you mentioned wells, but can you expand on that?
Yeah, we don't have any perk ponds. Again, we purchase finished water from San Francisco. As far as perk ponds in Los Altos Hills, if we were to do a groundwater, or excuse me, a surface water capture, that there's some difficulties there. As far as what you're pertaining to, Los Altos Hills has a fire district that's also a special district, and they've done a strong effort on Page Mill Road to push back brush on Page Mill Road, as well as through a dedicated evacuation zone that Los Altos Hills has identified.
Yeah, because that whole area is all just trees,
It
really.
is, yeah,
So,
it is. Yep.
Yeah.
Upper Page Mill is very susceptible, and in the CZU fire, I was in communication with our top customers that are up there because it started at the Skyline area, and the potential of it coming our way was the potential
We have
was there.
less than an hour left.
Thank you.
So and I have one other comment from Board Member Mr. Vella.
If we could turn up Director Vella's sound, please.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, I'll be very, very quick then. Compliments to Mr. Witt, but I do want to also say thank you to Nicole Sandkulla for continuing to invite the water management. This was something that I was very passionate about, that I wanted to hear from our water management to come in, because for all of us, the water management people and that group is our boots on the ground. We can talk policy all day long, but they are the boots on the ground, and they are the ones that will actually activate and put to use our policies that we make. So thank you so very much, and hopefully we'll continue to bring other water management people in the future to come and talk to us as well. So thank you.
Okay, seeing no other comments from the board, thank you very much, Mr. Witt. Public comment on this item, which is the WMR report. Peter, okay. Which, while you're up, well, okay. This is on the WMR report.
Thank you. Peter Dreckmeyer, Tuolumne River Trust. I think probably some of you know Gary Kremen, who used to serve on the Valley Water Board. Before that, he served on the Parisma Hills Water District Board. And one time he asked me, it's like, hey, you know, I want to learn about the Hetch Hetchy water system and water rights and how it gets to us and what the politics are. And so we met, and he said, wow, this is incredible. No one explains this to us. Will you come to my board and give the same presentation? So I did, and we had a great chat. Everyone appreciated it. I've presented to Valley Water, State Water Board, San Francisco PUC, San Francisco Planning Commission. Last year I presented to the Stanislaus County Water Committee, a bunch of ag interests. We had a wonderful conversation, learned a little bit more about each other. But there's really been a lack of interest from BAWSCA. I offer a lot to give workshops, which is supposed to be a gift of information, and it doesn't happen. In 2019, I was given 10 minutes, and it was information only. No one was allowed to ask any questions. To make good decisions, you need to hear from people. I've worked on these issues for 17 years. I think I have a lot of good information to share. And you can ignore all of it, but at least hear me out. At a recent CCAG, Resource Management and Conservation Program meeting, I kept telling them, hey, I'd be happy to give you a workshop. At the end of the meeting, a guy said, yeah, I'd like to hear Peter's presentation, and no one argued with it, so I gave him a presentation. When I was on the city council in Palo Alto, we could write a colleagues memo with one or two of our colleagues to get a discussion about, do we want to have something on the agenda? With BAWSCA, I don't, you know, I think a majority of you probably want to hear what we have to say, but how can we get it to happen? Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on the WMR report? Okay, next item is public comment on items not on the agenda. Mr. Rosencrantz. And then Mr. Dreckmeyer.
Thank you. Spreck Rosecrans, Restore Hetchy. I was a little disappointed when I opened my email and I saw that Miss Sandkulla, Nicole, was retiring. And she's been around a while. She worked under Art Jensen before, and Art, I thought, did an excellent job of what maybe isn't always that easy. I know you're all fine people, but you know, managing a group like this, you know, and you know, probably has challenges once in a while. And I thought Art did a great job. I think Nicole has done a really great job. And I know that there'll be some soiree later in the year, and I you know, may not come and spoil that for you. So I just wanted to say
You're welcome to come.
I really appreciate the work that Nicole has done for you all, and also the work that all of you do, because providing reliable water to communities is what makes our communities what they are. We obviously all need water. I do want to say that when you look for the replacement think about what BAWSCA is going to be like in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Is it going to be the same? Is it just going to buy water from San Francisco? Metropolitan Water District of Southern California started out as an importer of water from the Colorado River, selling to cities, kind of like what you guys are. State Water Project came along, and now they were selling water from 2 sources. Then they started building their own reservoirs and doing recycling and recharge projects and doing water transfers from the Sacramento Valley, all kinds of things. They are such a different organization from what they started. And I wonder whether BAWSCA ought to think hard, and maybe when you start to hire your new person, think hard about what the future is going to be. And any one of you, board members, could take a lead in shaping what could be a broader future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any more public comment? Next item is the action calendar. Public comment will be after each item. The first item presented by Ms. Sandkulla is a resolution honoring Bud Wendell and his service to the water customers. I don't know if you guys remember Bud. He was our strategic counsel. He's really worked with BAWSCA when it was BAWA. He really was instrumental in getting the politics together to get BAWA established by the state. So Ms. Sandkulla, please do your presentation.
Good evening, board members. This item, as the chair said, is a resolution honoring Bud Wendell's service. And I just have a few remarks to make. I actually first met Bud 24 years ago when he began working for BAWA, BAWSCA's predecessor organization. As a strategic counsel, Bud was a critical part of the team that successfully worked to pass the 3 bills in the California legislature that would force San Francisco to fix its seismically vulnerable system, and that would enable the formation of this agency and the Regional Financing Authority. And then once BAWSCA was formed, Bud's strategic counsel to the CEO and general manager continued to be critical to BAWSCA's work, including negotiating the 2009 water supply agreement and the subsequent contract amendments, and assessing and responding to the State Water Resources Control Board's Bay Delta Plan. You know, from the very beginning, Bud did not have a background in water. He was from business. He was a corporate guy. But from the very beginning, his work centered on protecting the public health and safety of the water customers and delivering results. He was always laser focused on the agency's goal of a reliable supply of high quality water at a fair price. And those were actually his words. That was really important. I cannot count the number of times that Bud and I shared those words with each other as we contemplated an issue before BAWSCA and strategized on how to respond. It was always from that perspective. These pictures are from a June 2019 celebration that we had at the BAWSCA office to celebrate Bud as he was moving to Florida. It was a wonderful opportunity for staff and members of the board to thank Bud in person for the work he had done so far for BAWSCA. And honestly, at the time, we were unclear about how Bud would continue to work with BAWSCA given the distance, right? This was pre-COVID. Little did we know that less than a year later, a global pandemic would change the way we all work, including enabling remote work for everybody, and that included Bud. Personally, I cannot express the depth of appreciation I have for what I learned from Bud. Not only did he share with me his talent for anticipating public issues, avoiding public disputes, maintaining accessible transparency, and the importance of pinpoint accuracy, but he also reinforced in me and subsequently in BAWSCA as an agency the value of integrity and family. These are some pictures of Bud and his family, including a picture from Easter 2023 with his great-granddaughter, Dorothea. As a veteran Marine from World War II, Bud had an incredible sense of loyalty, duty, and integrity with which he brought to his work with BAWSCA every day. As you know, Bud passed away peacefully earlier this year at home, surrounded by his family. We feel his loss daily, greatly at BAWSCA, and have taken to saying, I'm putting on my Bud hat here, or I'm channeling Bud here. I mean, all of us say it routinely in the office. The lessons that Bud taught us of delivering results to protect the water customer, ensuring accuracy in everything we do, and maintaining the integrity of the agency will continue to live within the fabric of BAWSCA. So for the board's consideration tonight is the resolution in recognition of his service to the water users that BAWSCA represents. I will also close in saying it is my hope that I will be able to attend the service that Bud's family is going to have for him at the end of the summer. That has not been scheduled yet. My intention would be to present this to them in person. I do have a backup. Former General Manager Art Jensen lives in New Jersey, and he has also offered to serve that role, and he has maintained a very close relationship with Bud's family. So that concludes my remarks.
Okay, items from the board, Ms. Hardy.
I'd like to make a resolution, I'd like to make a motion to pass a resolution in honor of Bud Wendell and thank Ms. Sandkulla for making this happen. We'll miss, all of us will miss him.
Okay, Ms. Pierce. Director Pierce.
And I'd like to second that. And Bud always said that we should plan ahead. You should always count your votes ahead of time. You should do your work and strategize. You should prepare, and you should be honorable about what you do. And every so often, I put on my Bud hat as well. So I second it heartily.
Okay, any further comments? I think we need to do a roll call. Do you have it?
Would you like to take public comment?
Public comment?
Yes.
Seeing no public comment, do a vote?
Okay. Andrews.
I am sorry for your loss.
Thank you. So, a vote? Are we going to go vote?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was
so-
moved and seconded. The vote is for a resolution.
Okay.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Bro.
In honor of Bud, I will say oorah.
Hoorah.
And yes for Brisbane and GVMID.
Excellent. Chambers.
Yes.
Cohen. Dorr.
Yes.
Duncan.
Yes.
Hamilton.
Aye.
Hardy.
Yes.
Hindi.
Yes.
Jordan. Lopez. Manalo. Matichek. Mellinger. Mickelson. Montano.
Yes.
Piccolotti. Pierce.
Yes.
Ragsdale.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Stevenson.
Yes.
Stone. Vella.
Yes.
Weed. And Zichterman.
Absolutely, yes.
Excellent, and the motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
all very much.
The next action item is contracting and funding to initiate the development of Strategy 2050. Mr. Ashoori, would you like to present this? And we have about 42 minutes left.
Good evening. So BAWSCA has now completed the scope of work for the long-term reliable water supply strategy 2050. And tonight I'm going to be going over what the necessary next steps are to both obtain and to fund the technical and the legal services needed to develop strategy 2050. This is shown on the current slide, but we will also discuss it further in the next few slides. In September of 2023, almost a year ago, we brought to the board a draft objective and purpose of what we wanted Strategy 2050 to be. And with the input of both the WMR and the board, we were able to refine both the purpose and objectives to support the identification of 7 key tasks for the scope of work, which will be shown on the next slide and is really the foundation of the work that we're going to be doing in the coming years. We wanted to take the year to really align the scope of work with not only our needs currently, but for the foreseeable future, which is why the board and WMR's input was so important this past year. And we wanted to continue presenting our work and obtaining your feedback throughout this year. Now, the Strategy 2050 scope of work, which can be seen in the board packet, it includes those defined primary tasks which tie directly back to the proposed purpose and objectives of Strategy 2050. I won't go into detail about each individual key tasks here tonight because I know we've spoken a lot about it in the last few months, and it's in the board packet that we have presented prior to this meeting. But we wanted to put it here on the slide to show that we have, set into motion these tasks that we wanted to develop in the coming years. And recently, we actually received some comments about our scope from Director Jordan, and we have included some clarifying words in our scope of work, but it hasn't changed any of the key tasks or the budget moving forward. We appreciate the comments that we have received over the last year from all of you, as well as the WMR, and we want to continue this in the coming once we started in January of 2025. So this is not the last time you'll see me up here presenting. So now that we're done with the scoping portion of the work, the next step is really to initiate the development, right? The development of Strategy 2050 and providing the funding to cover it. We have also had positive feedback regarding Strategy 2050 during our recent Regional Water Supply Reliability Roundtable workshop, which was held on June 17th, actually here in this room. There were about 25 people in attendance, and it included representatives from San Mateo County's Office of Sustainability, Sustainable San Mateo, Tuolumne River Trust, and water agencies both outside and within BAWSCA. And the discussion of the roundtable workshop was really focused on the proposed scope of work for Strategy 2050 development. And the participants were really highly supportive of the proposed approach for Strategy 2050. And then they also expressed a strong interest in being kept informed with Strategy 2050. So within our scope, we have included workshops and presentations with stakeholders that we will continue to have, continue that collaboration throughout the development of Strategy 2050. And during the June 17th workshop, participants shared their needs and concerns and interests related to Strategy 2050 and how ideas for how Strategy 2050 can support the region as a whole. And one example that we had is we presented a polling question in the beginning which asked participants which of the 7 key tasks are the greatest importance to participants. And a large majority of those polled indicated BAWSCA's role of providing support to member agencies in their efforts to obtaining funding, as well as defining drinking water affordability as the most important tasks in the workshop. So it's really helpful in highlighting some of these efforts that we're looking into continuing. Now, in order to facilitate a really an easy transition from the scoping of Strategy 2050 to its development, the original contract that BAWSCA entered into for the scoping effort left open the potential to use the same consultant for subsequent development. Now, BAWSCA considered numerous factors to decide into if we want to continue the work with EKI, who performed that scope of work for us. And some of these factors really included the quality of the scoping services provided by the consultants, which was excellent this year, whether the scoping services were completed on time and on budget, which they were, and the reasonableness of the business terms, such as schedule, price, and key staff for the development. And we really thought that by looking at that proposed terms, they were reasonable. Now, through looking at these factors, it is recommended for BAWSCA to continue the contract with EKI for the technical services related to the development of Strategy 2050 and work off of the work that they have already established in this year. Their proposed contract would be for $2,267,000 and would cover that completion of all the key tasks shown in the prior slide. Now, the second consultant resources needed is for legal services related to Strategy 2050. That's similar to what we had in the 2015 strategy. Hanson Bridget has reviewed that scope of work, and they have provided a budget of $180,000 for reviewing that's needed for each of those tasks in the development of Strategy 2050. And BAWSCA is recommending a separate contract for legal services related to Strategy 2050 to allow for that flexibility to pay for legal fees, since its development would span 3 separate fiscal years. And BAWSCA would also be able to more directly track those legal fees associated with this work. Now, to fund the technical and legal services needed to complete Strategy 2050, we are looking into using a water management charge through the authorization through the WSA. And I know we had first brought up the funding strategy for Strategy 2050 using a water management charge to the BPC in April and then the board in May. But I wanted to kind of go through what that looks like again. The water management charge was used to successfully fund the 2015 strategy. And at the time, the projected cost was roughly $2.3 million. We are proposing a similar funding strategy moving on for this time around for $2,447,000, and it would be collected over 18 months, which is about $136,000 per month. And charges allocated to the agency would be in proportion to an agency's fiscal year 2000-2001 regional water system purchases. And this is the same calculation and formula used for BAWSCA assessments and the same one that was used to fund the 2015 strategy. SFPUC could collect those funds via a new line item, which is the water management charge, and would remit the BAWSCA to BAWSCA for its use on behalf of its member agencies. And agencies are encouraged to seek additional legal guidance on the best way to recover those costs. And at the end of each fiscal year, a report would be provided to San Francisco stating how much money was received and what the funds were used for. Now, so in order to move forward with Strategy 2050 development, we are asking the board to authorize the CEO, general manager, to negotiate and execute a contract with EKI for the development of Strategy 2050 for a cost not to exceed of $2,267,000. Second is to execute a new contract with Hanson Bridget to provide legal services to support the development of Strategy 2050 with a cost of $180,000. And then the third is to enact the water management charge to fund the development of Strategy 2050. That work not to exceed amount of $2,447,000. That's the end of my remarks. Thank you.
Okay, we have 30 minutes left, so hopefully there aren't too many questions, but should we have Director Dorr?
Thank you for the presentation. First question on 2000 to 2001 charges as being the baseline. I understand that that was what was used for the 2015 strategy. We're now in 2024, 24 years after that. I'm curious why we're not using a more recent year to reflect current proportionality between member agencies and why we're instead, why that is being proposed instead.
So we're using that because of, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, speak up.
Hello. That is how we do the assessments, the BAWSCA agency assessments moving forward. So you can't hear me. Hello?
Andy, we can't hear her. Can you turn her up?
I'm like talking right in. Hello?
There we go. Much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that's based off the assessments that we have for BAWSCA, and that's something that we. Or did you want to?
If I could provide some further clarity on this, so The BAWSCA assessments, in which that's how you pay your annual budget, is set through your legislation. And that sets the assessments based upon the 2000-2001 share of sales. So your annual budget is allocated in accordance with those costs. In order to not deviate from how you would otherwise pay for this if you were, say, to fund it through your annual budget, that is why it's proposed to fund it this way for the water management charge.
Thank you. Other question, 2.44 is a lot of money that's being proposed for this project. I do have some sticker shock here, as I have had in previous meetings too. And I do worry about what happens when this team comes back to us in a year and says, hey, we need to increase by 200, 300,000. I'm worried about this, especially because we just had an increase in the rates that is being sent to the member agencies that will be passed on to ratepayers. So I am, the amount here, I am concerned about that cost being passed on, and just want to voice that to the rest of the board as well.
Director Andrews?
I'll be brief. I wanted to know about the number 2 on the Hanson Bridget cost. Is it going to be 60,000? And then it's a not to exceed, and would you come back to the board at 60,000 per year, or is it just roll over? I just want to make sure that we're managing costs of the 180.
Yeah, the 180 wouldn't be specifically 60,000 per fiscal year. It would
Okay.
just be a not to exceed amount for the entirety of the Strategy 2050 development.
Okay, and are there certain milestones or certain documents that in the proposal that have a certain amount of how much they will review? Because I can see them reviewing on and on and on, and then they hit 180 and said, oh, we spent more time at 30% or 40%, and then they come back and then request additional funds to do the 60 or 70. I just wanted to see what some of the controls are, if there's any insight to that.
We haven't done it by specific subtasks.
Okay.
It was more like on a task by task or on the whole scope of work.
Okay. So it's the 180 is based on the whole scope of work,
Right.
but is it broken out, or is it just one lump sum they offered?
It was
So for legal counsel's assistance, it is not broken out by task. We will allocate that and call for it as needed
Okay.
as the work develops. The technical work is allocated at the task and subtask level.
Okay.
So, we will manage that very carefully to ensure that we can maintain this contract within cost.
Okay, thank you.
Director Montano?
Thank you for your presentation. So I have a few questions. So on the recommendation, I'm wondering, so how long is this contract for? And when will we see the findings of the
Yeah, so
culmination of the
It will start in January of 2025, and we are thinking it will last 2 years.
2 years?
So 2 years. But throughout that, we will have results and things that we will be working on and presenting to the board and WMR.
That's what I wanted to ask, if you were going to be, during those 2 years, now that I know it's 2 years, are you going to be informing us of the status, the progress?
Definitely.
Of the contractor, EKI? And then how did you come up with that $2,267,000?
So they were looking at each of those subtasks and looking at how many hours it's going to take for each of the people within the consultant team to complete those tasks.
Okay. And so this will be for Strategy 2050, which is 25 more years. I mean, the projections for 25 years from now, and I won't be around. I think a lot of us won't be. Anyhow, so on the first page where you have the 7 key tasks for the scope of work reflect. So the first one, evaluate water supply and demand, manageability, reliability. That one there, they have to work with San Francisco Public Utilities Commission very closely because they're the ones that know all the details about how much water is in the dams and all that. So, but then again, I saw that down here that where we need to pay the water. I'm a little bit confused. our fair share is $135,944 per month. I don't know, I'm just, if you can just kind of, oh yes, San Francisco Public Utilities Commission would collect funds via a new line water management charge?
That
So-
was, yes, that was to fund the strategy development. So that would be through a line item, through what, your purchases, through San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, that would be given to each of the agencies to fund
So
the
our
strategy
city
work.
would have to pay that to BAWSCA or San Francisco Water Public?
To San Francisco.
So-
That would remit that amount to BAWSCA.
So
on
to
behalf of
provide
our-
some
Each city
clarity,
would have to pay that amount.
So to provide some clarity, Director Montano, your action tonight as a board, this item, this study, is included in the adopted work plan from a staffing perspective, but there is no budget for the consultant. As we were talking about putting the budget together for this current fiscal year, we said we are not going to recommend to fund this through assessments. We're going to recommend to fund it through the water management charge. The way that works is tonight you're giving me direction, if, assuming it passes, to say, send a letter to San Francisco and tell them to collect that $2.4 million from the wholesale customers on their water bills at a monthly increment. And that's why we're starting it now, so that we can get the money ahead of when we have to pay the consultant, right? If we're gonna start them in January, we need a little money. And so that's how much that that collective water management charge is to pay for this study. That's what that dollar amount is.
Thank you for that clarification. And then for the 7 key tasks, number 5, document drinking water affordability challenges and opportunities. I think that's going to be and again, I heard earlier from Mr. Ritchie about the affordability. You have people that are making millions and yet they pay the same amount that a poor person. So there's that equity. So I think that's going to be a big challenge on that. How do we fix that? So anyway, just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Jordan.
Okay, Steve Jordan?
Thank you for reviewing my comments today on this. And I wanted to point out one of them. I haven't seen any of the edits to the work plan, but one item we did discuss was at least my perception that we're calling out potable reuse and recycled water specifically, and I wanted to make sure that we didn't limit the consultant to just that they should also have the ability to consider desal if they saw fit. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments from the board? Any public comments on this item before a motion? Looking for a motion? Director Pierce?
So the last strategy that we had lasted for a number of years and really set the work plan for BAWSCA. It assisted all of the people who are served, who are water customers. It assisted all of our agencies with their urban water management plans and their plans for the future. This plan, while it has a large dollar amount, will set our pathway for the future. And so I am happy to make the recommendation that we approve the budget with the 3 authorizations as listed in the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second, Ms. Dragstead?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, let's do a roll call vote on this.
Andrews?
Yes.
Bro?
Yes for Bruce Manning, GVMID.
Chair Chambers?
Yes?
Cohen? Dorr? Duncan?
Yes.
Hamilton?
Aye.
Hardy?
Yes.
Hindi?
Yes.
Jordan? Lopez? Manalo? Matichek? Mellinger? Mickelson? Montano?
No.
Piccolotti? Pierce?
Yes.
Ragsdale?
Yes.
Schneider?
Yes.
Stevenson?
Yes.
Stone? Director Vella?
Yes.
Thank you. Weed?
Aye.
Zichterman?
Yes.
Thank you. And the motion passes.
And I should have, before the motion, is there any public comment on this?
You did.
I did.
Yeah, you did.
Okay. Given the time, I'm not so sure we should start item 8C. Item 8C is board compensation increase. Ms. Schutte was going to do a presentation. Should we postpone this to the next meeting? What my idea was is to have, after the presentation, go through and hopefully within the within 15 minutes, each board member could express their preference. The BPC said, there's really 4 ways we can go. We can do nothing, or we can increase the stipend amount to up to $200 a meeting, or we can clarify that the compensation increase would go into effect at the beginning of next fiscal year after we can put it in a budget, or we can require a review of the board of the compensation plan over some period, 4 years, 6 years, whatever. So what I would like to do is, if we were going to do this, do the presentation, allow every board member to speak once, and then open ourselves up for motions, because after everybody's spoken, we should know roughly where the people are standing. The issue I have is in 19 minutes, we need to be closing the meeting. So I don't think we can do this time. So I would like to postpone 8C until next meeting. Fair enough? So
You do have 2 comments if
Do
you
you
want.
do you need a motion for that, sir?
I don't think so. Okay, do I need a motion?
Legal counsel, does he need a motion to postpone an
You can
item?
continue it to the next meeting as the chair.
Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, Director Snyder.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear if you need a motion, given that this action wouldn't go into effect till 25, 26, postpone.
Well, yeah, although it could go in earlier than that, because we need, for this, we need to have, our motion would provide guidance to staff to prepare what we need to do. Because to change this funding, we need to have a public hearing. And so we need to know what we're going to have a public hearing on. Director Weed, I see a little groan. Do you want to make a comment?
I had raised this, brought this to the attention of the board. We can do it at the next meeting. We have $150,000 in our current budget for strategic council. I would assume the board's input would qualify as strategic council for a fraction of that cost. And it would be the appropriate thing to do on the 20-year anniversary. So if you're due at the next meeting, hopefully it's on the agenda for an action item for adoption that night.
Per council, I don't think we can do that, right? Because we don't know what we're going to take action on.
Right, we need direction before setting a hearing.
Correct.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so postponing.
So we're going to postpone 8C to next meeting. Next meeting will be fairly busy because
It's the CEO evaluation.
all
That's
right.
really it.
Okay, CEO, we have a CEO evaluation. What's this draw to?
So we'll skip those. All right.
Okay. Okay, CEO evaluation's coming up. We briefly mentioned it at the June BPC. To help with salary setting, I have requested a salary survey, which should be coming in mid-July. I expect to see it soon. The form will be the same as last year. On or about the 29th of July, you will receive an email with the link to the online form for doing the evaluation. Also attached to that email will be an annual performance report from our current CEO, a Exhibit A from her contract that has the CEO responsibilities, and then a little background information on BAWSCA. I would appreciate your input by August 12th or 2 weeks later. You'll have 2 weeks. And please submit. I will be doing follow-ups. If you're relatively new to the board, feel free to talk to your predecessor to get some information on that, or to mark not observed because you're not sure. But anyhow, I would appreciate getting responses by August 12th. And then I will consolidate. We will, prior to the September board meeting, I will send out a summary and a consolidation, which we will discuss in closed session at the September meeting. After that closed session, we will, in open session, discuss any changes for the evaluation process in the future, and also discuss any potential changes for salary for the current CEO. And it could conceivably help us decide how to price out our new solicitation. We'll see. Okay. Any questions on
Do you want to do the next one? too?
evaluation? Okay. Next piece is GM, CEO GM recruitment. We had 7 responses to our RFP that we approved last meeting. We had Zoom interviews. Okay, with the top 3, the ad hoc committee met, went over, we looked at all the 7 applicants, applications, responses. And really the top 3 were unanimous, essentially. So we interviewed those Zoom interviews with those 3. We selected Peter Smith of Koff Associates on June 29th and met with them via Zoom on July 2nd. We solicited inputs from the ad hoc committee by July 8th for the brochure. That brochure has since been posted on the Aqua website under jobs and it has a due date of August 13th. In late August, early September, ad hoc committee will interview the top candidates. And also, before those interviews, I will generate an update to let you know how many applicants we had and any other information that you guys may be interested in. Hopefully at the September 19th meeting, we will be able to present our top candidate for consideration. We do hope to get this person in place by November for a proper turnover. And that's basically it. Any comments from other members of the ad hoc committee? Director Pierce.
I'd just like to, and I'll be really quick.
We have 13 minutes.
Just want to let you know that the gentleman that we selected, Mr. Peter Smith, really was very intuitive in terms of understanding what BAWSCA needs and the strengths that are needed in the CEO, and he outperformed all of the other people who are being interviewed. He really engaged really quickly and turned things around rapidly, and they were really high quality. So it's a fast pace that we're moving at, but I want to assure you that the committee has really done some robust work, and I have every confidence in Mr. Smith and the committee.
Okay, any other comments? Director Ragsdale.
I'll just second that. Once we spoke to him, he really understood exactly. It was kind of amazing. He really had done his homework on what Nicole's job does and understood the subtleties of it. And really our only concern with him is he's the one who's going to be doing the work, right? Because we all really liked him so much, and we got assurance that he will be the one doing the work. So, and he took our feedback, but really knows what to do for us. So we're very happy.
And what I was impressed by was the fact that the committee was essentially unanimously selecting him and either top 1. I can't remember if anybody put him number 2, but they were really good. Excellent presentation. Okay. Public comment on those 2 CEO report parts. The rest of the CEO reports we're going to postpone. Seeing no public comment, any, or are there comments from the board? Okay, we have canceled the closed session, and I don't think we have enough time for. We could do one more public comment if we, we have 9 minutes left, so about 4 minutes, okay. Is that?
Director Andrews.
Yes, okay, Director Andrews.
I just want to say thank you for your patience. I am on the East Bay Discharges Authority meeting, and I try not to get a ticket rushing over here to be here at 6:30. So if you see me coming in late or a little bit later every meeting, it's because I have a 4 o'clock that ends between 6 and 6:30. So just want to let you all know that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
So Peter?
Peter, do you? I'll give you 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the opportunities to comment. I just wanted to wrap up a few things. When the SFPUC was doing a search for a new general manager, they actually had a stakeholder engagement process, and I got a call from the recruiter just to hear what I thought we should be looking for in the general manager. I thought that was pretty classy. The mayor then stepped in and appointed her guy, so the process disappeared after that, which was a real disappointment. Director Mickelson, you've made some good points tonight. Like you, I don't want to run out of water, but our point is that there's a lot of fear out there based on facts that we disagree with and that we challenge. And just wanted to point out that we've modeled what would happen, and we and the PUC, we each have a model. We can tell you what the outcome would be of different scenarios. But if the 6-year drought of record were to repeat at current demand with the Bay Delta plan in place, we could manage it without any conservation and without any alternative water supplies. So with conservation, which we're all used to, that's 7.5 years of the design drought. And then if you think the design drought makes sense, then you need alternative water supply to make up any difference. Or if you think demand's going to be much higher than it's been for the last 9 years. But those are discussions that we could have, and we can play with the numbers and see what we think is realistic and at least have a range. Because the alternative water supply plan, the 92 MGD is described as the outside envelope. If everything gets developed according to Plan Bay Area, it would be 92. It's not the low end. And then you have the obligations, which is 122. So the whole cost of that would be $17 to $25 billion, depending on the 92 to 122. That's a lot of money. And the budget and legislative analyst in San Francisco, they found that basically they looked at 2 years of debt for the SFPUC. They're bringing on $3 billion. And over 30 years with the debt service, it turns into $6.6 billion. So it's about equivalent to the $3 billion you saw for the 10-year plan for water. So that's $4.4 billion for BAWSCA. That's a lot of money, and we'd love to talk to you about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, director's discussion, comments, questions, and agenda requests. Any of those? Okay. Location of future meetings was part of your packet. Our next meeting will be September 19th at 6:30 in Burlingame, I assume.
Correct,
And
it will be in Burlingame.
Please make sure you read the report, staff report for HC, because we don't want to spend a lot of time on it in September because we need to do evaluation. We need hopefully to do recruitment. So just take a look and be ready to express your ideas. Okay. Unless there's anything else, I think we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.